important topic related to research methods. That is related to sampling technique. We all know that in research, selecting the sample is one of the very crucial steps, and that is very, very important. And if we know the basic principles, we can draw a good scientific sample, which has a direct relation to the validity of the research. Whatever research you are conducting or you plan to conduct, if you are not taking your sample properly, using the right kind of scientific methods or applying the right principles, the validity or the accuracy of your study will be affected, because sample has a direct relationship with the accuracy or finding the right numbers or the right results or the actual findings close to reality. So today we'll be discussing in detail about the various kind of sampling techniques, or you can say different methods of sampling, which we apply in research. And there are specific principles we follow while applying the different types of sampling technique. So we'll go through each of the common methods one by one. These are the learning objectives. We will explain the concept of sampling and its significance. After this session, you must be able to describe why we do sampling, what's the importance of sampling. You must be able to distinguish between major classification of sampling techniques and then the types of sampling under each heading, like the probability sampling versus non-probability and various type of each. And then you must be able to discuss and you must be able to apply actually or select the appropriate sampling technique when you plan a simple proposal at undergraduate level. So first we need to understand why we need sampling. So objective of each research, of all the research projects or each research project is to describe and to develop inferences about a population. When we plan research, our ultimate purpose is to apply the findings or draw the inferences about a large proportion or a large, a population which is scattered at a large geographical area or a huge population. Suppose if you are conducting a research in Karachi, suppose if you want to understand the level of awareness about the COVID-19 in Karachi population. So you are targeting the whole Karachi, and you just whatever survey you are conducting related to the topic, you would like to apply the findings on the whole population living in the Karachi, that is in millions, or you would like that your findings are actually representing the population of interest, that is all the people living in Karachi. So this is what we want from research. So let us imagine that we are going to make studies to get the following information. For example, you are interested in a survey on a study to draw the inferences regarding the percentage of pregnant rural women who are willing to deliver at a healthcare facility. Because we know still in Pakistan, a large proportion of women are not delivering at health facilities, and particularly in rural settings, they prefer to deliver at home, which is usually not a skilled delivery. So the percentage of pregnant rural women who are willing to deliver at a health facility, this is your objective, which you want to achieve through your research. You want to know what's the exact percentage of women are still delivering at healthcare facility in rural setting. So what you need to know before you conduct the survey, you need to know to whom you will include in your study. Will you include all the men and women in the community you are targeting? That is, of course, a rural community. Or how will you decide who is going to be part of your study? All the pregnant women in the rural community? Or all the women, or the only pregnant women, or what else? And number 3, how you will ensure that your results must reflect actual population scenario. So you have to ensure through your sampling methodology that your results are the true reflection of the population of interest and are rightly representing the phenomena in the population which you are targeting. So these are the questions which may arise in your mind in the initial phases before you are clear yourself that what you are going to do in your sampling. So sampling is basically defined as the process of selecting subset of observations from an entire population of interest so that characteristics from the subset, that is the sample, can be used to draw conclusion or making inference about the entire population. So what we do in sampling, as I have already discussed, is a process through which you select the subset of observations. Suppose like I was just giving example of Karachi. So if you are conducting a survey for the population of Karachi, for anybody, it is not possible to represent the millions of people living in Karachi so easily. So we would like to take a subset of the people living in Karachi from the entire population of Karachi to study the characteristics or the phenomena we want to study. And we will draw the conclusion from the findings coming out of the subset. And then we will make inferences about the entire population. So whatever the sample will reflect, we will generalize that on the related population. Suppose in the hypothetical scenario, as I'm talking about Karachi, so it will be Karachi population. I hope this is clear. This is what we call sample. What is sample? So it's a process of selecting that subset. Because even if you are using a subset, you have to follow certain principles. Otherwise, the subset you will be selecting may not be the true representative of the population you are of concern. So a subset is okay. A subset of a population is a sample, but whether the sample is accurately selected or not, this is our point of interest at this point in time. So हमारा interest ये है whether the sample is rightly selected, applying the specific scientific principles or not, because sampling is very easy, but if there are certain set of principles, then of course it becomes complicated. And if you do not follow the principles, then the sample is not going to reflect the true or the entire population, which is your ultimate purpose. And but while understanding that the sampling has to be followed a specific set of scientific principles, we need to understand that the sampling is very, very helpful, because when we do sampling, it reduces the cost. It's easier to collect data from a few hundreds of the people from the population as compared to interviewing or collecting information from millions of population in the city, millions of people living in the city. So it reduced the cost, it reduced the time spent in field for data collection, for survey or interviews, or all kind of data collection related activities. And of course, when it is rightly selected following the specific scientific principles, it increases the accuracy. It increases the accuracy, or you can say the validity of your research. So it increases actually the overall worth of doing that project, because your findings if your findings are the true reflection of the target population. That's why sampling is very, very important and very, very helpful. We just, it's not that difficult as well. We just need to understand few basic principles, and if we can follow them, it really makes our life easy and increases the worth of your work. There are a few basic terminologies related to sampling technique, which we need to understand before we proceed with the various types of sampling techniques we can choose among. So number one, study population. When we say study population, it refers to the entire set of individuals about which findings of a survey refer to. For example, if we are interested in studying the awareness about the transmission of COVID-19 in human being, or awareness about simple COVID-19 severity among the people living in Karachi. So entire set of individuals includes all the people living in Karachi. If I say awareness about the COVID-19 among school-age children, then the entire set of individuals only target the school-age children living in Karachi. or whatever city is my target, whatever place I'm talking about. So the entire set of individuals basically is the entire set of population to which you will be reflecting your findings that you want to relate to, or to which you will be referring. Then comes the element. Among the target population or the study population, the 1% from that population is known as one element. So now, the individual member, suppose if I'm doing a survey in Karachi about the awareness of COVID-19, the 1% from Karachi is my element. If I'm talking about the survey among adults, so every adult person, if I'm doing a survey in the school age children, so I will exclude the adults. Of course, I will be the entire population, only include the school age children, and one element of that population will be one school age children. Then comes the sampling unit. Sampling unit is again a very, very important term, and these are the individual or unit or entities that make up the sampling frame. This is again, the sampling unit is basically the individual or entities to make up the sampling frame. This is actually what is sampling frame. First, I think I should go through sampling frame. Sampling frame basically list of all the sampling units from which sample is drawn, like all children of 5 years of age or households or healthcare units. So list of all sampling units. Suppose if I am conducting a survey of awareness about COVID-19 transmission or spread among school age children. So the list of all the children of school going age, all the children of school going age will make my sampling frame who are living in Karachi, because I am conducting this survey in Karachi. So all the children of school going age who are living in Karachi, they are making my sampling frame. And in my sampling frame, suppose in Karachi, there are millions or thousands of children who are school going age and who are actually can be part of my search. So I will make a whole list of those children. And that list is the sampling frame. And every children who is part of that list, because the children is school going age and living in Karachi, is known as the sampling unit. So the sampling frame includes all the potential participants or the people who were part of your study population. And from the sampling frame, you have to draw a subset that will be your sample, and you will be doing sampling at the individual level. So your sampling unit is one children. But in many cases, in many searches, the sampling unit maybe the person, but maybe the household or the health facility. For suppose if you are doing a survey, and you want to understand, the about something about the health facilities. Suppose if you want to understand the percentage or the frequency of the healthcare facilities following proper infection control practices in Karachi, your sampling frame will include all the healthcare facilities in Karachi, and your sampling unit will not be the person or an individual, but it will be an individual facility. So you will make the list of all the suppose the best secondary care, primary care. You may have categorized, like you may want to understand the best the percentage of dental clinics in Karachi who are following the standard sterilization practices. So the list of all the dental clinics will make your sampling frame, and you will of course select a subset on certain principles from that list. That is your sampling unit. And now you are sampling the facility, not a person. So the sampling unit will be the clinic or the facility or the dental clinic, but not a person. But if you are doing a survey and your sampling frame is made up of people, like if you are doing a ruler based survey, so like we just discussed about the pregnant woman example in previous slide. So the ruler pregnant woman, you want to study how many of them will deliver in the facility. So you can make a list of pregnant rural women and you can draw a subset out of that, and that's individual person level sampling. So your sampling unit is pregnant rural women instead of a health facility. So the sampling frame makes the actually a collection, or provide you a frame, or exhaustive list of the potential participants among that can be a facility, that can be a person, depending on the type or objective of your research. And again, the unit of analysis. So we talked about sampling frame, sampling unit. Now we will talk about unit of analysis. The unit at which analysis will be done for inferring about the population, that is unit of analysis. And consider that you want to determine the presence of anemia in pregnancy. So what is the unit of analysis? If you want to understand the prevalence of anemia in pregnancy, so the unit of analysis will be what? The percentage of pregnant women having anemia, of course. So the pregnant woman will be your unit of analysis. Likewise, if number of children having awareness, school-age children having awareness about COVID-19, so transmission, so your unit of analysis will be children, school-age children. So you will describe your results like percentage of children. Suppose 80% of children are aware of about the COVID transmission in Karachi, school-age children. Okay. So this is how you will be describing or concluding your results. So if you know what you want to achieve, what you want to know the percentage of children who have awareness about COVID-19 in Karachi. So you know that you want to analyze the data at the individual level, that is the child. So your unit of analysis will be most of the time, not always, but most of the time it remains same as your sampling unit. Like we have discussed, just it is pregnant women in the given example. So this is the actually picture which is trying to reflect how we do sampling. The target population, suppose for example this is Karachi or any other city, you have a steady population. In population you have people from all backgrounds and different age groups. There are children, adults, male, female, everyone is there. Now you select your population, your study population, that may be the children, the school-age children, like we discussed in previous hypothetical scenario. So the school-age children will make your sampling frame. You may take out only the school-age list of school-age children, and from that list you make a frame, and out of that frame you will apply the technique and you will select the sample, and a few of the, not all, but a subset or a subgroup of those children in the list will be part of your final sample. This is how we do sampling. So now this is just a reflection of the previously described slide. Define the population of concern. Suppose we are talking about Karachi, but in a hypothetical scenario we are discussing, it is maybe the school-age children. So you are just interested in the school-age children in Karachi, not the whole population living in Karachi. So specifying a sampling frame while understanding your target population is whom, and a set of items or events possible to measure, and specifying a sampling method for selecting items or events from the frame. So this is the point. Once you have a frame, now you can decide which type of sampling technique you will apply. And we will make it clear in upcoming slides, but this is the point where you have to choose among so many sampling techniques or methodologies, which one you are going to select depending on various rounds. We will discuss determining the sample size. Sample size is a whole different topic, and it is calculated statistically using specific formulas. So that you must be covered in biostatistics related lectures, but you already, when you are doing sampling, you already have a sample size in hand. So you will be knowing the sample size and choose that particular number. Suppose your sample size, if it is 300, so out of this sampling frame, you have to select, the sampling frame may have 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 or millions of children. But if your sample size is 300, you have to choose only 300 children using a specific technique from this list of huge list, and then implementing the plan to collect data, and then you collect the data as you have planned according to the whatever technique you have finalized. This is the process of statistical sampling, again a reflection to make it clear in your mind. So a theoretical population, the population of Karachi maybe. So what do you want to generalize? We want to generalize our research in the Karachi Okay, the study population. So we are interested what population you can get access to. So yes, what is the population of interest? The school age children of Karachi, and we want to know their awareness level regarding COVID-19 transmission, how transmission can occur. And then, so you make a sampling frame. You have get a list to collect the information about all the children of school age living in Karachi. And then, among all the millions or thousands of children living in Karachi who are school age children, you have to select those 300 or 400, whatever is your sample size, who are actually will be part of your finally your sample. So you have to collect that subset, and there are many ways of collecting it. So now we have covered up till this, and now we will discuss more about how to do the final step, that is who is in your study, how you will decide in the last step who is going to be part of your study among the millions or thousands in the list. Okay, so this is very important. So now uh, just focus on the two major types of sampling. Okay, that is probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is a type of sampling in which each element in the population has the probability of being chosen. So what is probability sampling? In simple words, in probability sampling, every person or every individual which is part of your sampling frame, they have a chance that they become part of your sample, or they can be selected in the subset. So even if you have a population of 300 millions and you are doing a probability sampling, the sampling allows everyone to have a chance at least to become part of subset. Of course, if you have to take a sample of 3,000 out of 300 million, not everyone will be the part of sample, but the technique you will be applying will actually give a chance, or there will be a possibility that everyone can be a part of your sample. They may or may not be, but they have that chance as well. You are not excluding them deliberately. While in non-probability sampling, it is a type of sampling in which some elements or some individuals in the population or sampling frame have no chance of selection in the sample. You can say that you deprive many of or some of the people or individuals or sampling units in the sampling frame, and you deprive them of the chance to become part of the sample. Suppose if you have already decided that I will take the ones who are living near to my house, so you are not giving the chance who are living as a bit away from far away from your houses, so you have excluded already the people not living near your street. So it is just something like that. We will be discussing in detail in the upcoming slides. So probability sampling, if it is there, every person or individual or sampling unit, whether it's a facility or household, have a chance to become part of sample. While in non-probability sampling, uh, we just do not provide this chance to all the individuals or sampling units in the sampling frame. This is the classification of sampling, non-probability sampling and probability sampling. So non-probability sampling, in which we do not provide chance to every sampling unit, there are four major types: convenient sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. While in probability sampling, where we actually the researcher provides, or there is a probability for everyone in the sampling frame to become part of sample. There are simple random sampling, the most basic kind of probability sampling. And on this, all are actually derived. So the systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, multi-stage sampling. These are all the types of probability sampling. So at undergraduate level, at least this classification, you must know this classification, and this is very important to learn you by heart, that at this level to become a researcher, you have to start with these very basic things. You know all the basic terminologies as well. So number one type of the non-probability sampling, that is convenient sampling. Convenient, the name reflects. Convenience means something which is easily doable, where the feasibility is better. So the samples are selected because they are easily accessible to the researcher. So in this, what happens? The researcher takes the individuals or the sampling units or the facilities or households, whatever is the sampling unit. It takes the sample, includes the people or individuals in sample which are easily accessible. easiest, cheapest, and least time consuming, usually used in clinical research. Likewise, you are conducting a survey, and you are conducting a survey in your medical school, and you go in class, and whoever meets you first, whoever you find first, you just ask them and to be part of your research, and you just include them as participants, and using the same technique you completed your sample, and you just was not interested, or you just did not make any effort to ensure that all the participants or colleagues who may be absent or away from the class at that point in time, they also should be given a chance to become part of the sample. So this is the non-probability convenient sampling. It is all based on the easy access to the sample. Whoever is easily accessible will be part of the sample. The people who are not available for any reason or who do not come in contact, they will always deprived of the chance to become part of your research. So that's why it is a non-probability sampling, and it is usually used in preliminary research, or many times undergraduate students also prefer this, or when the researcher has lack of time or resources, or so they can compromise, and they can use this technique. The problem with this research is the sampling and selection bias are major limitations. Many times, what happens, your sample may be different when you are taking your sample on the basis of convenience only. So that's why maybe the people who are, if we are doing a survey on health seeking behavior of the population, and you are collecting data from all the peoples coming in OPD of civil hospital, maybe the people who are coming to OPD or taking care of themselves and seeking health care, they may be different from people who hardly come to health facility even when they are sick, and they have poor health seeking behaviors, or they have different firm beliefs, and they avoid to come to facility when even when they are sick. They are different kind of people. So your sample will be easily collected because OPD is very heavy in civil hospital. Even you have a 500 sample, you can collect that sample in few days time very easily, and with little effort, little travel, no cost at all. But the sample might be different from the people who did not show up at the OPD when they were sick. So there are sampling error, means the difference, the error in the sample because of the sampling technique or the way the sample was chosen, that may be there. Selection bias, of course, if you are collecting inconvenience, you are collecting data on the basis of your easily accessible population. So maybe you may select people from a particular facility only or particular environment only, and your findings are not reflected of the whole population. Suppose if you are talking about Karachi, if you are taking data from OPD of civil hospital, it may not be representative of the people of Karachi going to private OPDs, who are going to Hakims, or who are going to Quacks. So they may be different population. So the selection bias is there. You are popular. You are only selected one kind of population and one socioeconomic strata or one particular kind of population group presenting at civil hospital OPD, but may not be presenting the whole Karachi. So that's where non-probability sampling cannot be generalized to the whole population. This is the sampling. So this is the researcher in red, and whoever is coming in contact or who is closer, easy to reach, the researcher will include them. See in this, the people in purple, blue, and green. As all the purple people are far away, the researcher deliberately included the green and blue who were quicker and closer to enroll. Then comes the purposive sampling, also known as judgmental sampling. Sample selected in deliberative, non-random fashion again, and the researcher selects the sample based on his judgment that who should be in the study. For example, a researcher may decide to draw the entire sample from one representative city using a predefined criteria. Like a researcher may choose who would be part of the sample, or a researcher may choose if the researcher wants to know about the quality of family planning services in an area. The researcher decide himself that I would ask the married women only, or I would ask the healthcare providers working at those facilities, and he will go and interview them, and he will not allow any other healthcare worker to participate, will not invite them even. So this is a purposive kind of sampling. The researcher chooses the participants who can fully fulfill the purpose of the search. So deliberate selection is there, a non-random selection is there, and non-probability sampling is there. Again, the sampling error and exclusion bias may be there. Suppose they may exclude a very they may exclude the any person like the gynecologist, obstetrics, and any other persons who are also going to affect the use or uptake of the family planning in the community, or the role of midwives, or the role of quacks, or whatever. So exclusion bias of different kinds depending on the type and topic of search may occur. Then comes the quota sampling. So the research ensures representation of predetermined subgroups of population. As the name depicts the quota. Quota means a subset, a subgroup. We are talking about a group with particular kind of characteristics. So in this, research ensures representation of predetermined subgroup of population, let's suppose age, gender, education, or ethnicities, and this allows the researcher to observe relationship between subgroups. And it may or may not be totally representative of the population, and over-representation of one group or one kind of group with characteristics or particular subgroup may occur. This is the example. Suppose in the population in a city, they are 50% male, 50% female, and 70% among them are white, and 30% of population is black. When you are doing a quota sample, so again 50% are males and 50% are females. So if you are doing a survey, you will select deliberately 50% of your sample from males and 50% from females. But what can happen, this is a proportionate quota sampling, and then you can do a disproportionate quota sampling when you decide that I will also select or otherwise, like I will select 50% of my sample from white population and 50% of my sample from black population. You see there is an underrepresentation of white population if you take a sample of 50% from white, and overrepresentation of black population who are actually comprising only 30% of the population. So if you take a sample of 70-30, it makes a proportionate quota sampling for white and black. But if you say take a sample of 50-50, it makes a disproportionate quota sample for the races. But it is while male and female sample is an example of proportionate quota sample. So here is overrepresentation of black in the sample and underrepresentation of white. So representative of gender distribution population, not representative of race distribution, right? So this is how the quota sampling works. This is again a non-probability sampling because you are choosing people by your own criteria for the quota, and not everyone will have the equal chance to become part of your sample because you have just limit the quota for white, male, female, and black. So you are just depriving a huge proportion from the chance. Now comes the snowball sampling, which is a very, very interesting kind of sampling. It is also known as network sampling. It is a preferred method when desired sample characteristic is rare, or you are also working on a topic which is taboo in the society, and it relies on referrals from initial subjects to generate additional subjects. While this technique can be dramatically lower search cost, it comes at the expense of introducing bias because the technique itself reduces the likelihood of the sample will represent a good cross-section. In simpler words, I will show you this. Suppose if you want to conduct a survey or you want to conducting a research among the commercial sex workers. So commercial sex workers in our society like Pakistan or in most of the countries, you can say in major part of the world where it is not legalized, where commercial sex is not a legally authorized profession. What happens, they are considered as it is considered as a taboo profession, and people hide even if they are commercial sex workers. So if you want to conduct a survey, nobody will easily mention you, or there is no particular place where you can go and find easily commercial sex workers in a huge number to complete your sample. And not everyone, even if they are belong to those work or profession, they will agree in front of you to participate, and who would like to participate, and even they would not disclose their identity as commercial sex worker. So what happens, you just identify one of the person, like suppose this woman in red, and then you request her to connect to her colleagues or her friends who are in the same profession or in the same practices. And this way you just keep on connecting to new people. Each person will connect you few more people, and then again for few more people. The one major limitation is that A commercial sex worker who is working in Defense DHA Clifton or in a posh area might be different in her practices and knowledge and background as compared to the commercial sex workers who are working in a slum area. So the connections they will be giving you, they might be their friends or their colleagues, they might have the same background, while this actually enhances the risk that you might be ending up collecting same for people with similar kind of backgrounds and lifestyle, and you will not be able to capture the sample from all varieties, possible varieties. So this is one big limitation. The same goes the other example of snowball sampling with the people who are involved in illicit drug trade or tobacco trade, like जिसको हम smuggling कहते हैं. So illegal trade of drugs like heroin, like marijuana, like even the tobacco. If you are conducting a research about them, nobody will disclose their status because it is illegal kind of job. So you can apply these kind of sampling technique in those scenarios where it is not easy to identify the participant. Now comes when to use non-probability sampling. So all these techniques, all these 4 common techniques we have discussed, when we use them, we can use them when randomization is impossible, even when sampling frame is not available. And you can use when the researcher does not aim to generalize results, but they will be used to create generalizations pertaining to the entire population. And also useful when the researcher has limited budget and time or workforce. And the technique can also be used as an initial study, which will be carried out again using a randomized or probability sampling. So if a researcher is initially doing a pilot, if a researcher is doing a pilot research, if a researcher is just doing a preliminary research, and a huge or a bigger, larger research is already in plan, then using this technique can be justified. And when the researcher has limitations in resources, people, money, time, whatever. So these techniques, 4 techniques can be applied, whatever you find appropriate as per the need of the research study you are conducting. Now comes the a little complicated, you can say a little, but also the more valid techniques of sampling, which include the probability samplings. Number 1 is simple random sampling. It's a sample of, if a sample size of n, that can be 300, 400, whatever, is drawn from a population of size n, that can be 1 million, in such a way that every possible size of n have the same chance of being selected, the sampling procedure is called simple random sampling. So it simply says that when every individual can become part of sample, then the sampling is simple random sampling. The sample thus obtained is called a simple random sample, and the individual elements in a population have the same chances of being selected. It forms the basis of our other sampling techniques, as I have mentioned in the non-probability sampling types. So what happens? It is basically you take a sampling frame, okay? Suppose take a simpler example. If in a class you have 50 students, 1 to 50, and you have to select only 20 in your sample, what you will do, you will write each roll number on the slip and you will make a head draw. That's a lottery method. So you will just put all those in a box or in a hat, you will shake it, and you will take out randomly any 20, and those 20 will make your random sample. So this is the same technique, simple, what is we do in simple random method, whether we use the head draw lottery method or whether we use the computer method. So the sampling, what happens, representative actual population. So the sample is actually not handpicked. It is randomly selected because all 50 students were included in the draw. So everyone had the equal chance to be selected as part of the draw. So this is what this simple random sampling do. So important minorities might not be taken into account, because if the people who are actually 1 or 2, like suppose if you have an African in your class and 1 Spanish in your class, and there are only 1 and 1 in your out of 50, so there are less chances of getting them in sample. So of course minorities can be missed naturally, but otherwise everyone has given a chance. And there are various methods of doing it, like random number table, out of head draw, lottery method, or computer programs. You make a random number, assigning a number to every person in the sampling frame and then selecting it. So there are many ways of doing it randomly. This is one example. So then comes the stratified random sampling. A stratified random sampling is basically one obtained by separating population elements into non-overlapping groups called strata. is actually quite similar to the quota sampling. In quota, what we were doing, we were making quota on the basis of different characteristics, and we want the representation of each characteristic in our sample. Like we wanted that our sample comprise of males and females both. And we take 50-50% in the quota sampling, the example we just shared. In stratified random sampling, we also want to highlight certain traits. We want to ensure that suppose in a community, suppose you are collecting data from a community where the Urdu speaking, the Sindhi ethnicity, Punjabi ethnicity, the Pakhtun ethnicity, and Saraiki, they all five are living together. And you want to make sure that in your sample, you have representation of all those five ethnicities, and you don't want to miss anybody from a particular ethnicity, or you want equal representation of all the ethnicities in your sample. So what you can do, you can divide your sample into strata. So stratified, what you will do, it is the process of grouping members of the population into relatively homogeneous subgroups before sampling. So you will divide them into 5 homogeneous groups. So you will make, suppose in your community, you will make 5 groups of each ethnicity, like a group of Urdu speaking, group of Sindhi, group of Punjabis, Pakhtuns, and Saraikis. And all the strata should be mutually exclusive. So what happens? Actually, a person can be a Sindhi speaking at a time or Pakhtun at a time. They cannot share the characteristics. So they are mutually exclusive groups now on the basis of their ethnicity. And when researcher wants to highlight specific group, so that is what they are doing. And what they will do, the researcher can representatively sample even the smallest and most accessible subgroups in the population. Even if you have only 2 Saraiki in the whole 1,000 of community, you will have a group for them, and you will have the representation, which was actually not possible in simple random for minorities. If you just remember simple random, we can not ensure the inclusion of minorities, but in stratified, yes, we can. So this is how you do. Suppose if you have a sample of 300 and you have Caucasians, African American, and Hispanic American in your community. So you make 3 groups out of that, and then you have a sample of 300. So you can take 100, 100, 100 from all 3. So you have random subsample of the population. This is the strat. This is how you collect it. And in Caucasians, if you have to select the random 100, what you will do, you will have a list of all the Caucasians, and then you will select 100 randomly by head draw or lottery method, or you are providing the chance of selection to all of the Caucasians in the community to become part of the sample. Same will go to all the possible subgroups. So this is how we'll do stratified random sampling. Then comes the systematic sampling. This is a bit more tricky. A sample obtained by randomly selecting one element from the k elements in the frame, and then every kth element thereafter is called systematic sample. What happens? We start a random selection of participants. Sorry. So we will select a random selection. I think we should go directly to the table to make it simple. Yes. You have a population of 100 and you have a sample of 20. You want to select 20 out of these 100 and you want to apply systematic sampling. So what you will first of all, you have to calculate the kth number. The kth number is the number which will tell you that what system you will have to follow. You find kth number always dividing the total population by your sample size. Capital N is your total population in the frame, and N is the small n is your sample size. Suppose in this scenario, it's 100 divided by 20 is equal to 5. So you will select every 5th person in the list. That system will be followed till the achievement of your sample of 20. So first person will be selected randomly. So you can select first person randomly from 1 to 5. So it was 4 by chance. So now you will have to select every 5th person. So you will start with 4 and take every 5th. So starting with 4, now you will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 9 person listed at 9 number will be your participant. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The person listed at 14, now this person will also will be included in your sample. Now every fifth, that's 19, then 24, then 29, 34, 39, 44, 49, 54. This is how you will following the every fifth the number of system 5 that is calculated using the formula, and this formula will be same always for systematic sampling. The number will be different depending on your total population size and your sample size, and this number is known as kth number. So now you will easily understand. So a sample obtained by randomly selecting one element from the kth elements in the frame, and then every kth element that was fifth in our scenario will be selected, and this is example of systematic sample. And a random start will be there. A use of systematic sampling, this population must be listed in a random order, and a random table or sampling frame is a must. If you don't have a sampling frame, you cannot apply systematic sampling. Easier to perform in field, less subject to selection error, especially if a good frame is not available, and provided greater information per unit cost. This is the formula of kth number, capital N upon N. This is the interval size of the system you will follow. Likewise, we were following the fifth number in the example. So randomly select the first integer between 1 to k, and then take every kth unit. That can be fifth, every fifth, fourth, third, whatever you obtained from this calculation of n, capital N divided by small n. Strengths. It extends the sample to all population, evenly sampled, cluster selection, systematically eliminated, because it's following a system, so there you will have a variety in your sample. Limitations, there may be hidden periodic traits, the pattern, maybe there is a population pattern which you will capture by mistake, and you need a sampling frame or complete list of units, as I mentioned. We have gone through this example. Now comes the cluster sampling, a very, very again popular technique, but relatively with limited, less used or less applied relatively because of the effort and cost requires to implement this technique. Cluster sample is a probability sampling in which each sampling unit is a collection or cluster of elements, or preferred when a good frame listing population elements either is not available or is very costly to obtain, or while a frame listing cluster is easily obtained. Okay, so what happens basically when you don't have a list of the whole population elements or the people in the population or the facilities, whatever is your sampling unit, it is not available, or it will take lots of efforts or money or to obtain a list, or while it's easier to obtain a cluster or a group of people randomly. So basically it is done. What happens basically, it is, well, suppose if you are doing research at a larger population, and suppose you are doing a survey in Karachi or in a whole pocket, in a whole huge province of whole Sindh, whatever, and you want to collect sample from all over the province, and only Karachi is so big, and if you're talking about the whole province of Sindh, then it becomes really huge sample and huge population in your sampling frame, and it's very hard to list all the people living in the whole Sindh and to select your sample out of that list. So what makes your life easy is to divide the whole Sindh into different kind of demarcations or blocks and select among those randomly. For example, Sindh has 23 districts. Karachi is just one of the districts. Hyderabad, Sakkar, Mirpur Khas, Jafrabad. There are 23 districts in Karachi, if you know that. So what if you take the 23 districts and each district as one cluster? So now it makes your life easier, and then you select certain number of people from each cluster. Likewise, if you are doing a survey in Gulshan Iqbal has 14 blocks or I think more. So if you take each block or union council maybe as one cluster, so it makes it easier to cover the whole area randomly, instead of just going and making a list of all the people living in each house and every street of the Gulshan Iqbal, which is again a huge area, and we're having millions of population. So that is the main concept about cluster sampling. So our cluster sampling, like I was discussing, divide population into clusters, usually long geographical boundaries. Always remember one key thing in your mind when you are covering populations scattered over a large geographical region. One of the best design is always cluster sampling. So in cluster sampling, the researcher first identifies boundaries in case it can be countries within Asia. It is important that all areas or clusters within the population be given equal chances of being selected. Yes, how it is random? Because if I have to select 6 districts out of 23 districts in the province of Sindh for my survey, so to represent the whole Sindh, so I will be selecting those 6 districts randomly, very randomly. I may take the say 23 papers, and I can make a head draw or a computer generated selection of 6 districts, or I can use other random methods. So randomly selecting a number of districts will actually give the probability to all the 23 districts to become part of your sample. This is how we make it a probable sample. So randomly sample or select clusters, and the searcher can either include all the individuals within the cluster or selected areas, or he can randomly select subjects from the identified areas. For suppose I have selected 6 districts out of 23 districts in the province of Sindh, and then out of those 6 randomly selected districts, I can take sample of 50 or 100 on the simple random sampling, or using systematic sampling, or even the convenient sampling. I can use any method which is more appropriate and feasible for me as per the situation. So, but the 6 districts I have chosen randomly. So this is how we do cluster sampling. Limitations are always there with, like in research, no search is without limitation. I have discussed limitation of each and every design. Likewise, it has limitations like least representative of the population. Suppose if I select 6 districts of Sindh, I may miss Karachi because it's a random draw or head draw or computer-based selection. So maybe I missed Karachi. I may miss the major urban, representation in my sample. So it may happen. Overrepresented or underrepresented cluster, which can skew the results of the study. So likewise, same. High sampling error, including limited numbers of cluster. If suppose Sindh is so huge, and I'm just taking 6 districts to represent the whole Sindh, and I'm taking only 6 out of 23, which is again not a very good number. So select, or I may take only 3 districts to represent the Sindh. It will further reduce the number of districts. So including a very limited number of clusters have a negative effect on your sample. So you will have more sampling error. Your sample will not be actually representative of the Sindh. So to have a better representation, it always have to have good number or larger number of clusters in your sample. And cluster members may be more alike than those in other cluster, homogeneous. Yes, people living in Karachi, they are more alike to each other as compared to people living in Jacobabad. So people living in Jacobabad and Kashmir are more alike each other. People living in Saqqara and Hyderabad are, so that's why in each cluster, inside the cluster, people will be same. They are more similar. But if you compare one cluster to other, like if you compare Karachi cluster to the Kashmir or the Mirpur Khas cluster, the populations will be different in 2 clusters. So there will be inter-cluster homogeneity, but there will be inter-cluster variation, and intra-cluster inside the cluster they will be same. So that will be there. So that's why you have to make sure that you have a variety in your clusters. This is how we do it. Suppose if each red area is your cluster, so if to cover a large geographic region, so if assume like if it is Sindh, it is not Sindh by the way, it is a map from some international data. So this is actually 5 clusters are there. See, this is covering a huge area by choosing just the 5 clusters. Having more cluster is better if you have resources and time. See, and then you can choose different and you can just have different cities. So each area is demarcation for different city. Elements within a cluster are often physically close each other, share same host geographical boundaries. We have discussed clusters should be as heterogeneous as possible within, and one cluster should look very much like another in order to the economic advantage. So we just try to have, and we are doing an example of Sindh or any other. So like, of course, even if you are comparing a population within a city, You can have the union councils as your cluster. You can have the villages. If you are conducting a research in Sakhar and you may have villages, so you can have 12 number of villages. You can randomly select 4, 5, 6 villages as your cluster. But it all depends the selection which boundaries or which areas you will include or describe this cluster all depends on your study objectives, and your cluster should be as heterogeneous as possible within, and it's better to have a variety in cluster, otherwise they tend to be same, and one cluster should look very much like another, so they must look from the same population, not they must not be very different, and this is good for your economic advantage, otherwise you have to have include more. The multi-stage sampling, this is the last sampling. What happens in multi-stage sampling if you combine 2, 3, 4 techniques for a large geographical level of survey, like nationwide survey. So then you can combine various techniques, and that we call as multi-stage techniques. For example, if you are conducting a survey in Pakistan, you have 4 provinces. So you will select 4 provinces. In each province, you will have few districts as clusters. In each cluster, again, you have to select certain villages randomly, and of course, in each village, you will randomly select or systematically select certain households. So combining 3, 4 techniques at least is known as, when you are applying more than 2 sampling techniques, more than 2, it is multi-stage sampling. When you're applying only 2 techniques, like you do make cluster, and in cluster you do convenience sampling, simple random sampling, or any other sampling, but only 2 sampling techniques are in total are applied, it is 2-stage sampling. But when there are more than 2 types of sampling techniques are applied at different stages, so then it becomes multi-stage sampling. I think at undergraduate level, you are not doing that level of research. It is beyond your scope. But for you, it is important to remember that when you actually, there are 4 methods that they have covered, but even if there are 3, that becomes multi-stage sampling. So this is all about sampling. I hope it is clear to you. These concepts are not very complex, but needs your attention. Please go through the slides later on. And please do write me for your questions and queries about the topic. I will be happy to answer you. Please note down my email address. Please feel free to contact for any kind of queries or confusions. If you need any clarity about any point in the lecture, please contact. Thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz.